All right, guys. Thanks for joining. It's 5 p.m., so we'll make this interesting and worth your while, hopefully. So my name is Praveen. I'm one of the product managers for the vRealize Operations Suite. And with me is Sam McBride.
Yeah, I'm Sam McBride. I'm a senior engineer at VMware, and I work on VCOps. Probably could call me an architect for it.
Cool. So today's session is going to be focused on giving you guys sort of a preview and also a demo of the capabilities of the current version we are working on as the main part of the demo. But a lot of the focus is going to be on troubleshooting and best practices on how to use the tool to solve problems in the product. So we're pretty excited because the first time we're showing the new product to this audience. Also, I'd like to disclaim that the network is a little bit slow, so it's going to take some time because it's a live demo. So hopefully the demo gods smile upon us today. So I'll just get a little bit started with some context setting before we jump directly into the demo piece of it. So when we talk about the VROps suite, we basically have 3 different suites focused on different parts of the IT lifecycle. One focused on provisioning, one focused on operations, and the other on the business management piece. But today we are focusing on the VCOps piece of the overall suite offering. And one thing to note is that from a product strategy point of view, the management business unit at VMware is a little bit different in the sense that we're not just focused on the vSphere piece of the puzzle, because we know that operations management is a cross-discipline capabilities, right? So we want to make sure that we cover all the pieces of the environment and not just focus on vSphere. And I'm actually going to show some examples of how we are taking different parts of the environment and providing the same level of coverage we have for the vSphere domain. So think of us as best in class for the vSphere constructs. Anything new that comes out like vSAN, vVol, et cetera, we will be best in class for that. But at the same time, we also have extensions that allow us to get additional visibility beyond the vSphere environment because ops management cuts across multiple domains. Click, click. So with that, we can just go over some of the pieces of the demo. Just hand it over to Sam.
Sure. Are you ready to demo?
I think we are. We're just going to get on with it.
All right. This is VC. Well, now it's not VCOps anymore. It's VR operations, vRealize. We've rebranded it for 6.0. We've also just started. We start your day by looking at the first dashboard that we have. This is categorizing alerts in health, risk, and efficiency. When we think about health, we think about things to call someone up in the middle of the night to address. When we talk about risk, we're talking about important planning or imminent planning that you can have. It's worth having a meeting on in the next week or so. And then efficiency, we're using efficiency as a alternative way to solve problems in your capacity risk, such as finding reclaimable capacity that you provision through VMs. Maybe they're oversized, maybe they're VMs that people have forgotten about, and they are turning idle. And here you can see below that we have some the problems. What kind of problems that we have in the middle is for the population. So you can see risk is orange because a significant amount of its population is unhealthy. And the health is green, and that's because there's no issues whatsoever to be called. Now, the way that we create alerts is through hard thresholds combined with analytics, which are analytics to us include calculating stress, calculating expected behavior of metrics and VMs, and we combine them together such that if I want to look at, say, a workload that's very high on health and I want to be alerted on it, I might not want to be alerted on high workload that is expected to happen. The same goes with capacity risk. There's a lot of vendors out there that will pre-populate disk space with or allocate all the disk space upon installation, but it's not growing. So we can combine our time remaining, which calculates the slope or when it's going to run out, with our capacity remaining and silence those alerts, capacity remaining alerts, that aren't growing, which is an important use case to many people, like the system disk. It might be full, but who cares? Nothing is being written to it. And so, since vCops or vRealize operations is a brand new product, I'm going to take you to a couple areas just to get familiar with it if you've used to the 5.x.
And by the way, feel free to ask questions during the demo. We want to keep this as interactive as possible. The gentleman over there has a mic. We can distribute the mics around, and we'll repeat the questions if you just shout it out as well.
Right. Okay, so the first level here that we see are what we call the home, or it used to be called the dashboards. And this was in the custom UI, and we've moved them to the vSphere UI and just created one single UI out of both of the 5.x UIs. And so out of the box, since we manage more than just vSphere, we've started the day with this recommendations. And we expect that a good percentage of your problems will be found automatically for you, and you simply need to come here and click and see the recommendations. For example, if I go look at one of these, I see that I have a virtual machine that is running out of disk space. I click on it, it brings up the alert details, and it shows me all the symptoms that came to this conclusion. And the first is the guest partition disk space usage is very high, 97.8%. And then it also combined the time remaining, that example that I gave you. It's saying that it's about to run out. And so this is a disk space problem that is almost full, and it's running out, and it's sloping up. Okay, so all the details are here to solve your problem and give you the evidence of what's wrong with this box. I'll give you another example. If there's an action that can be done, such as on this efficiency, we see that we have a virtual machine that has large disk snapshots. And we have several variants of these alerts. This one is solely on efficiency, and what it means is that these two systems have disk snapshots, but it's not impacting your disk I/O workload. So they may have low disk I/O. However, we have another alert that's very similar that looks for snapshots on a VM and also sees if there's a difference between the latency of the VMDK and the data store that it lives on. And if the latency discrepancy is big enough, we'll guess at saying maybe these snapshots are causing problems. And we can look at things like thin provisioning, cloning, and so forth. We can combine all these symptoms to show you, to give you the best recommendation that we have. So in this particular one, what's nice is this alert has a command right here. So our alerts support recommendations, more than one recommendation. And also, if that recommendation can have an action, like removing disk snapshots, I can attach it to the recommendation.
Question?
Under whose account is it done on vCenter? If I log into vCenter,
the question is, whose account is this action running as? It's the account that you log into vCops that also has an account on vCenter. Okay.
And also we've now reconciled feature and object-based permission model in the interface. So you can say these group of people have access to these set of objects and can perform these set of functions. So you have both now, flexibility. Question?
So on vCenter, you will see that it was done by vCops. And on vCops, is there any nodes that who did it? Like is it being logged actually?
The question is, are actions being logged? And the answer is yes. We have activities and audit log in our admin area. So you can see in the admin, there's an audit menu item, and then also there's tasks that are being tracked so that you can see if it terminated properly. Yeah.
Question?
Can I deliver the action to other user to take the action instead of the administrator?
Yeah, so our actions, we support a simple Python method just to go to vCenter itself, or we also support hooking up with VCO. And when you hook up with VCO, that would have the advanced workflows of having other users approve it and so forth, or putting it, scheduling it for a maintenance window or other use cases similar to that. Okay, so getting back to the dashboard. So that's one way to solve a problem, is it's just done for you. You go here, you look at an alert, and then you click on the alert, you see the evidence, you either submit a trouble ticket or go do an action right straight from the system. Another way is you don't have an alert. So somebody calls you. And we call this workload, the diagnose. No matter how good alerts you have, your telephone is going to be, well, your worst friend or best friend or something like that. And then you can just type in a, oops. Why? I'm trying to filter here. We'll do one of these guys. Oops. Put the whole name in there. So somebody will call in and say, hey, I have this system. It's giving me troubles. You'll just use the search, go to, you'll see a map of related objects that might be impacted as well with a health indicator on there. So I could have this virtual machine that is relying on a data store that's having troubles, or a network that's having trouble, or a host that's having trouble. And quickly I can go, my searched object is selected first, but I can easily go to the data store that it's running on and see the analytics based for that data store. And the analytics are shown on the right here. So we look at it for workload. This anomalies is the expected behavior, and you can see there are some little mountains there that are, it was misbehaving at one point. And then we do a work week stress analysis. Those little red squares are areas of peak load. So if the problem happened during the previous week, you can see that. And then you can also keep going and get to specific metrics for this guy. So if I wanted to go look at data store I/O and look at, say, latency, which I see is yellow, must be already here. Yeah, so latency, you can see that it's really going up all the way to 307 milliseconds, and its lowest is 22 milliseconds. Not a very good data store on this case. So if they call and they say, it just feels slow, you can look at the CPU, memory, disk I/O, network I/O manually, and then you go build an alert that includes maybe itself plus its children. So the data store is modeled as a child of a virtual machine, and you can construct the alerts to go look at symptoms that are on the child objects. Now, speaking of symptoms, I can go to the virtual machine itself or the data store by going into our in-context navigation. So here, this is where we put all the trees that we know about of all the data sources that we're collecting. So if we were collecting storage, we would have a tree dedicated to storage. NSX, virtual networks, there would be a tree for networks. Behind the scenes, they're all related by real relationships, but we use this as a kind of filter to reduce confusion. So if I go here, we'll look at something familiar, which is a vCenter tree. And so I have a data center with a host and clusters, a cluster and hosts, and then underneath I have virtual machines. So what I'm going to do is generate some load on one of these guys. We'll just cause a storm of issues here. All right. But while it'll take 5 minutes for it to recognize those loads, so what I'll do is I'll kind of give you a tour of this area. So this is our in context. You go to any system here, a virtual machine, and you can see that the summary page tells you filters for the alerts that are on this object. Here I have issues with this system that have been around for a while. One is I have chronic memory workload issues. That is causing memory stress. What's nice on this one is I have my symptoms like I showed before, and the recommendation is actually to increase the memory of the VM. So I can select increase the memory. I can tell it how much memory I want to add. I can say that I will allow a power off, and please take a snapshot before you do the action. Okay?
So there was a question earlier from a gentleman. You can take that one and then queue up as well.
Could these actions be integrated with VCO?
Yes. The question is, can these actions be integrated with VCO? Yes. I, for simplicity, used our Python bindings, but we have a VCO adapter as well. So they will go through either. I'm not going to change that memory, but let's go take a look at this object. On the left side, it says what objects are impacted. That means that more than one object could actually be in an alert. It's a virtual machine. I clicked on the virtual machine without leaving the alert, and I can see a better analysis of the stress. So it said I had memory stress. Let's go take a look. This is our area where we host all of our nightly analysis. We analyze the VM for these 8 different ways. What is its instantaneous workload? Anomalies, we covered. Faults, we didn't cover. Faults is a prescriptive way for an outside system to say, this is a problem, like a network link down. Okay? Then we have capacity remaining, which is the way it's the long term. How should I size this VM? And that's a good one to drill down in. We should be seeing that memory issue, which we do.
What's really cool is that now we actually have details pages to better explain the capacity numbers. In the previous version of the product, we had specific views, but now we actually go into a lot of detail that Shannon is going to show now.
Yeah, so here we have the demand being shown for the last 30 days. My policy is set to look at 30 days worth of activity and only allow a certain amount of what we call stress. And that stress is that red zone. So if you have 1 or 2 spikes in there, we'll allow it. But if you have a sustained stress, we'll bump up the recommendation. So here we see a stress-free recommendation of your size is, for this box, is 1.17 gigabytes. So that's basically to satisfy those spikes that happened about a few days ago. And so that's what we use for calculating capacity remaining. And we use it, you can control by policy how much stress that you will allow. And here is the policy setting that I'm currently using. And as you can see, our recommendations can go above your existing configuration because when we measure the metrics that we're using, which is demand, can exceed capacity. And the reason is it's a rate metric plus it includes the amount of time or latency that it didn't get memory. So once you can measure your usage and then you put on top of that the amount of memory I couldn't get, then you have demand, which is how much the VM wanted. Okay? And so this graph is really explains, as Praveen said, explains how these numbers are being calculated up here. This is your usable capacity, which is your buffers, and then this is the stress-free amount that you should install to make this VM happy.
If you have allocation turned on in your policy, the good thing about the page is that it shows you both numbers if you have both turned on. So you don't have to sort of guess what would be if the workloads were based on allocation or demand. You see both the numbers side by side if you have it by policy.
Yeah. Another cool feature that's in 6.0 for helping find problems is we've integrated what we used to have called views to make them accessible right here on the right. So I've created several views just to look at workloads in various ways. I can look at disk I/O and break it down. I can look at a trend or look at it by a list. So in this particular case, what I'll do is I'll go up one to its host, or maybe even here. Let's just go take a look at a bunch of virtual machines and what kind of disk I/O they're doing.
And these views are fully customizable on the right-hand side. This is what, in the product, we're going to come out with out of the box. But then you can always add your own specific views in that list and say, I want these views to show up there as well.
All right, and we'll show that right now. So it took me over to the views area to find these problems around disk I/O. So it's given me a list view that is ordered by, well, we'll just wait. Okay. So here's your workload. Here's your stress. So it's saying that this person here is creating the most amount of disk I/O stress. Number of outstanding I/Os. Number of IOPS. KBPS, so forth. Now, I think by now, what's that?
We're getting some crosstalk.
Somebody's talking to us under the desk here. So we'll go back to the recommendations and see if there's a disk I/O problem that I fired off. There was some stuff in the list. Well, I do have a network problem here. So it says this virtual machine is generating unexpected traffic. So somehow this box, for some reason, has transmit packets that are not only high, but they're unexpected. And that's because I just ran a benchmark that is not on a regular cycle. So the pattern that it made was not a regular pattern, but one that it was mostly idle until just right now, and it created this alert for us. This is an example of how we combine multiple symptoms to create an alert. And so let's kind of go back and see what a symptom is. Over in the content area, you'll see a list here. There's dashboards, views, reports, alert definitions, symptom definitions, actions, recommendations, supermetric group types. All of these are things that a partner, or what we call a solution partner, and they create management packs, can offer as part of when they installed. So these are the, I showed you the results of the alert definition, but what goes into defining it starts here. And let's go look at disk. So
essentially, what we have told partners is that when you think about a management pack, also think about the content. What problems are you trying to solve? So the new VCOps 6.0 management packs are not just about bringing the data in. It brings topology in, like the different ways of visualizing the graph and relationships. It brings content, what Sam talked about in terms of dashboard, etc. The moment you install a management pack, you get all of this out of the box. And we plan to update this every release out of cycle. So you don't have to wait for a major product release. It's very easy to update.
And this is an example of the rules right here. So you give it a name, something human readable, and then you give it a description if you want to expand on it. You tell it what this object is about. This is about a virtual machine. What it's going to impact. Is it health? Get somebody up in the middle of the night? How is the criticality calculated? I've selected symptom-based, which when these over to the right are all the symptoms that we have included in this alert. And so the highest symptom, criticality, will be shown. What does it impact? Storage performance, your wait cycle, and your cancel cycle. Then you add your symptoms, and you have a library here. If we wanted to get some more symptoms, we could just kind of drag them over. I'll show you. This is an unrelated symptom, but we're going to show you how this works. So I've selected symptoms defined on myself, and I have said that they're going to be metric symptoms about disk, and I've dragged them over. And so here are the two symptoms that I dragged over, and you can have combination. So here it says any of these symptoms fire. This is all. And then up here at a higher level, you have also all. And so that will help find, this is what tailor makes this problem alert for a specific use case, which is, in this particular case, the disk has just got slow service time or low throughput. Then you can add recommendations. Our recommendations increase IOPS, turn off storage control, I/O control, delete some snapshots. These are all possible reasons why the disk is not performing to expectation. Okay.
So any metric, property, or event that VCOps now collects from the vSphere data sources and also from the non-vSphere data sources can be used to create these problem alerts. And also, as Sam mentioned, include the analytics in there. So you can use that as a way of doing a test on a condition. Like if workload goes up a certain percentage and I see these specific symptoms, then I have this issue. So it's very powerful, and you can add your own recommendations as well.
Yeah. Now going back to the alert, that same network alert that we had, I have tabs across the top that help also with diagnostics. We looked at symptom, but you can also look at all the symptoms that are not even related to this alert on this list. So we have object risk, it's virtual machine CPU demand exceeds its provisioned CPU capacity. Virtual machine stress is critical, and so forth. Then you can also look at it on a timeline. So the timeline will show all the symptoms that are occurring for this box and when they happened. As you can see here. So in this particular case, we see that we have, this is probably the network trouble that we just started, but there were some other symptoms that were occurring in the past. You can see the relationships of this when this when this symptom occurred or this alert occurred, it could actually move while you're waiting for the, to look at the alert. So this is the topology of this VM at the time that the alert happened. So we take a snapshot of it and track it. And then the last is the metric charts. Again, this metric charts by default is set to the time that the virtual machine was triggered, and it will select all the interesting metrics that happen at that time by default, and you can add more. So if I go here
and one of the things that's good about the alerts is that we also have a population use case where what we can do is we can say if 50% of my population exhibits this problem, then trigger. So you have the flexibility of going after a specific set of objects, but you can also look for trends and say if this particular trend happens, then alert me.
One of the use cases that I like to pull this up on is something similar to this, is that I like to look, when I'm diagnosing CPU issues, you can look at the CPU demand. This is how much the VM wanted on CPU, and then you can see why it's not getting it. So I have a little bit of contention, but if I put in, let's say, I/O wait, swap wait, and there's another one, co-stop. Co-stop is probably 0 on this one. I only have one virtual machine, one vCPU. But I can see that my demand is pretty high at this time. And I can see that my contention is not so bad. But what it's contending on is somewhere between I/O and that's it. Yeah, I/O. And then you can also put idle time and even ready. So you can just pull all these metrics in and compare them together. And it really breaks down when you're diagnosing like a CPU problem into what exactly is causing it. Sometimes things like that are not problems do show up as problems, like idle. Idle can take some metrics that look like the CPU has latency and inflate them. And the reason is because there's an idle tax that's applied to VMs that are idle. Also, disk I/O. When a disk I/O transaction is occurring, the CPU actually goes into an idle state. And that's because the hypervisor is actually doing work for it, so why not let it idle until that work is done? And it'll show up there.
Any questions so far?
I'll show you one of the things that Praveen was talking about, which was on the details page, I was looking at very many views. So one of the things that you can do to help debugging is just pick a view or build a view that you like and attach it to this right-hand side. Okay, so it has several here, but maybe I want to add another. I go to the details area to look at the views. And I'm just going to create one about CPU. All right. So for this one, I'm going to do a CPU contention for virtual machines. So they're going to be children, so I'm going to pick a list view.
Essentially, the way you should think about a view is think of it as a rows and columns in an Excel sheet that you can transform into a visual like a pie chart, bar chart, list, etc. So we basically made that unit very easy to transform into a visual, either in a view, a report, or even a dashboard if you want to.
Right, and I'm dragging the columns in now, so I'm getting contention. Maybe I don't want the last value, but maybe I want the max value. And maybe I want to sort descending on this. So the highest contention will be first. I'll find the max value for that contention. And then what will be useful is just to simply know what the demand and usage was at the time that you had your max contention. And the way that you do that is select the metric, and you say metric correlation. The function is going to be maximum. That's what we're looking at. And I want to know the value for demand at contention. And it is CPU. And same with this one. Metric correlation. Select contention. CPU, contention. Now I have maximum contention plus the value of the metric for these demand and usage at the time that the contention was at its highest. Now, I just built this, and I think I really like it. So I'm going to apply it to the workload page, workload badge, and maybe anomalies. And so this is going to be, it's going to be for a cluster or anything that has VMs as children. So it'll be available at data store, it'll be available at host, cluster, data center, and so forth. You can exclude it from, say, some objects that you don't think it's appropriate, such as a VM itself. When you select a VM, you'll have one record that's shown.
And you can also specify the time frame for which the window on which you want to run this view on in terms of days, months, etc. So it's completely configurable. What is the window you want to look at for this particular view? So now we see we have this VM that has CPU contention of 97%, and the demand is 2.56, and the usage is also 2.56. So these are good examples of this was the demand at this contention, and this was vice versa. These are the demands at these representative contention as well. And then as we go back, you can see that my view is now shown here. CPU contention for VMs. Okay, so that's several ways that we put together things to try to make diagnostics of problems easier. It starts with the summary, this dashboard. Then you can use the high-level dashboards that we provide out of the box to do diagnostics, look at the environment overview, focus on operations management, or focus on capacity management, and then changing appliance. And as you can see, more alerts are coming in. This one is high disk I/O workload on a data store. You click on it, and it's got, essentially, this data store is not running well. It's got a very high read latency. It even has a very high write latency and so forth, and the IOs are high. Anyway, any questions? Yeah.
The scheduling delivery options for these sorts of reports. If you want to have something on a regular
Yes. He's asking for a scheduled delivery of reports. Can we do it? And the answer is yes. Over in the details area, or not details, but in the tree, if I want to create a report and deliver it regularly of that view that I just created, I just create a new report and say my favorite. Go to the view. It was called CPU something. Contention for VMs. Now I've built my report. Okay? I can say that I want it in PDF or CSV. I can include a cover page. If I want more than one view in there, I can actually do that as well. I can just drag more views.
Also, if you want to include, let's say, a logo or some disclaimer information at the top part of the report, all you have to do is create a view, like a text view, put the disclaimer text and icons or company logo, etc., and then just drag and drop it in here. So if you want to put that detail, you can do that too.
So I have 3 views in this report with a cover page. And it will come to me as a PDF. And then I simply schedule the report here. I say I want it to run in this time zone at this hour, run it every Monday on every week, Monday, and email the report to some email address. Yeah. Okay. The reporting is not so much diagnostics, if you will. Hopefully, if you're trying to diagnose or prevent, you're in the kind of the operation, getting alerts and so forth. You can do a report of alerts or symptoms as well, which is kind of beneficial. You can groom the symptoms. As you noticed, I had probably under, let's see, on any given object, we have symptoms that are firing. This is for the world. Let me go select a host or something. And so all these symptoms can be firing. What's nice about this is I can define symptoms that don't generate alerts, that are included in alerts that are just academic information. Or I can just define symptoms and say, I want to see these on a heat map, but I don't want people sent an email, an alert. Because alerts mean something very important to us, which is I'm going to call someone, I'm going to get a trouble ticket open, and so forth. But symptoms are just as important to help identify hotspots in the environment. And so what I like to do is I like to create more symptoms than I have alerts. And I'll come in here and just kind of look at them and say, okay, these symptoms aren't quite right. They need to have a higher threshold, or they need to be combined with other symptoms to be valuable. And I'll just go change them. Or if I see someone calls in and says, hey, I got a problem with this box, and I look for an alert and I don't see it, I'll come to this page second to see if I even have symptoms on this problem. Now, so far what I've talked about symptoms, I've only talked about symptoms for this object. We also have a way to look at symptoms for a population. And you can see that on this page here. This symptom right here is a population symptom, and it's built using the same UI that builds the self-symptoms. And so we'll see group, population, risk is elevated. Let's go over to the alert definitions. Type in group for a filter. And risk. And Well, I'm going to have to create one. All right. Group, alert for many symptoms. Select my base object type, which is a group. No, we'll just do a cluster. We don't have groups defined. This one. Just say it's going to impact health. Defined on children, descendants. So you have various options. I can look for problems on my descendants, my ancestors, my parent, or my child or self. So because this is going to be on a cluster and VMs are too removed away from the cluster, I have to select descendants.
Essentially, where you detect the problem and where you want the problem to be surfaced. That's really what this flexibility gives you.
Now I've got some symptoms defined for a virtual machine. Let's just kind of use that latency example and drag these here. So, what are we looking at? So I've built a symptom for a cluster that looks at the children or the descendants of the cluster. And I can say that the population is so big, like in raw counts, or I can say this fires off if any or all, or percent. So percent, let's say I'm going to say 10%. I only want to be notified when the world's on fire, I guess, if you will. And it will be any of these symptoms that are down below. Hit save. Now we've created an alert that will look for disk I/O latency at a cluster level for the virtual machines.
There was a question there.
Yes, I would like to know if vRealize will be packaged in different versions, like backups, and in case, which version are we looking at right now?
The version that we're looking at is the one that we're going to release this fall. This is the one, did we announce it yesterday?
Yes, and
so
the way to think about...
Advanced, enterprise?
So the difference between standard, advanced, and enterprise is standard, you get all this. You get everything out of the box, but you can't customize it. So you get the alerts that the vSphere solution provided. Advanced, you get to customize. You get to build your own reports, your own alerts, your own views, everything. Advanced is about being customizable. And then enterprise is about more data. Include application awareness and so forth. So we will, in standard and advanced, we provide the vSphere adapter, kind of all things VMware.
vSphere specific.
Yeah, vSphere, it includes network and MPSD.
No, that's in advanced.
Okay, so the management pack for storage devices, which leverages VASA and our universal kind of APIs, comes in advanced.
So the alerts you just made can be possibly made only with advanced or enterprise, not with standard, right?
There will be a whole bunch of out-of-box content. So there's like about hundreds of alerts, 200 views, etc. All that you get out of the box. Our goal is to make sure that you don't spend a lot of time doing this on your own. We'll come up with a whole bunch of out-of-box content. But if you want to go beyond that and customize, you have to be on the right edition. But with every management pack, we want to add a whole bunch of content. We've shifted focus to coming out with a lot of content starting this release.
Yeah.
So what I also wanted to do was sort of give you guys a preview of the storage capabilities that we're working on. I mentioned earlier in the start of this session that VCOps is not just about vSphere, it's also about bringing in data from additional sources adjacent to the vSphere environment. So to that end, what we did is that starting last year, we started spending time to go after the adjacent infrastructure for a vSphere environment, namely the storage stack and the network stack, for example. And what we want to do is bring visibility of physical storage inside vCops. So in the previous version of the product, we released something called as a management pack for storage devices. And that brought in visibility for fiber channel and fiber channel over Ethernet, like FCOE protocols. And it gave visibility from the HBA to the fabric to the array. And it uses standardized protocols like SIM, SMIS, and VASA to get that visibility from the HBA to the fabric to the array. We are working on another version right now, which is taking advantage of all of these capabilities that Sam demoed around problem alerts, views, dashboards, etc., and come out with an out-of-box experience around there. So to give you an example, this is the same familiar user interface that you're used to seeing for a vSphere environment. As Sam mentioned, the inventory tree area is extensible. So here you see we now have additional items here in the inventory tree, which is coming in from the management pack for storage devices. And for example, I have a SAN view here. I can look at how the SAN is laid out from the SAN's perspective. So I can expand this and get details about the SAN, the fabric, specific zone configuration, etc., and see how things are laid out there. I can also switch to a storage device view, which gives me sort of the vSphere-centric answer. So I can go to specific VMs in my environment and look at how things are laid out. One thing you'll notice is that the right-hand side view is exactly the same for vSphere. What does that mean? It means that the analytics that you have for a vSphere environment, like workload, time remaining, anomalies, etc., are now available for storage as well. So we're actually working with partners to teach them how the vCops analytics work and asking them to tag what are problematic metrics for them and correlate that with issues here that we see in the storage stack. So what this means from a troubleshooting flow standpoint is that the concept of a workload, which is all about how hard you're pushing a resource, is the same for a vSphere environment, and it's the same concept for a storage environment, except that the metrics are a little bit different. So when you're thinking about a problem, you don't have to worry about, oh, how does this filer look like, or how does the storage array look like? It's all normalized now in vCops, and it's a common language for you to troubleshoot. So it's gone away from looking at like latency metrics, etc., to thinking about, do I have a workload problem? And do I have a workload problem in my vSphere environment, or do I have a workload problem in my storage stack? So that's how we have sort of codified this. A good example of a troubleshooting flow here we can sort of highlight is to sort of go here and search for, let's say, a LUN, right? The most common question some storage admin would ask is, which VMs are backing a specific LUN number? So here I'm going to just go ahead and give a random LUN number. I see that there's LUN 168 available that vCops is aware of. And immediately I can see how is this LUN provisioned to other parts of the environment that vCops is aware of. So I can see that this LUN is related to a host. It relates to a vCenter. And by the way, this is the VM that's backing the LUN. So within a single click, I can see which VMs are using the LUN, and I can get details about it. I can also switch to, for example, a host view, and then toggle to the host and see, show me all the relationships that this host has based on all the management packs that are installed in VROps. For example, I'm going to click on a HBA here, and just pick one of these HBAs. Again, I see the exact same content available on the right-hand side. For example, I can go to the analysis view and get specific details about the HBA. For example, how hard am I pushing the workload on the HBA? And on the right-hand side, you'll notice that we've actually pulled in property informations as well. So not only are you looking at performance metrics, you're also looking at information like what's the driver version, firmware level, etc., all within the same console. And our goal is to sort of extend this concept to the network stack as well. So we're starting with storage. So I mentioned fiber channel and FCOE. We're also adding NFS, iSCSI, and vSAN support as well by end of this year. So just to give you a topology view of vSAN, so I can click on the vSAN view, and I go all the way to the disks backing a vSAN and look at smart details and any kind of disk group information as well in my topology. And again, it's the same familiar UI that you see for the vSphere environment, but all laid out here. And I can click on, for example, this particular vCenter server that actually has a vSAN cluster, and let's say pick a ESX host here, and I can go all the way and look at all the VMs that are on this ESX host, and the disk groups, and the vSAN disk backing the environment. So this is an example of how we've taken the power of VCOps and made it extensible to all domains that are outside of vSphere and brought it all in one place. So with that, I think we are almost out of time. So if you have any last questions, we can take that. Otherwise, okay, yeah, go ahead. Right, so the question was around virtual volumes. So what we have done now from a roadmap perspective is that we're focusing right now on the traditional data stores, which is a large part of the environment. We're going to come and support vVol subsequently as soon as our partners implement some of this data. So what are partners working on now? So they're obviously working on vVol. They're also working on something called as an IOstats profile, which is now part of the VASA 2.0 spec. What that does is it brings performance statistics about arrays and brings them into VCOps. So as long as a partner implements IOstats profile, I'm actually going to get performance stats as well. So once they implement that, the next step would be vVol support. All right, guys, I think we're out of time. What we're going to do is end the session and take your questions offline. Thanks a lot for coming in.
We can.
Okay.